Just nobody breathe on it.
Oh, jeez.
So firstly, I just wanted to say thank you all for showing up. This is our Native American Heritage Month. It's November, and so I really wanted to take this time to focus on Native American and Indigenous heritage for our peer support professionals specifically. So while I was creating the event image, Raya, who I'm going to introduce here in just a second, was so kind as to reach out and tell me what I had done was actually kind of moderately racist, honestly. And so it opened up a really great conversation between her and I, because that's how collaboration starts, right? And that's how I want this panel specifically to go, is because I want us to be able to open up our minds, open up our ability to know that we don't know everything. And so this is a really great opportunity for everybody to kind of ask questions, get to know each other a little bit more, and then we will open it up to a Q&A afterwards. So part of starting this endeavor is I was talking with Raya and we were speaking about land acknowledgements. And so in the past, I have been told that land acknowledgements it's not appropriate to have somebody of Indigenous culture or of Native culture to read a land acknowledgement, but then Raya brought it to my attention and has a very specific land acknowledgement that she would like to open up with. So, and then after we do the land acknowledgement, I will have Joelle come up and talk a little bit about what she does. I'll have Dara talk a little bit about what she does, and then we'll move on into the panel. So go ahead, Raya.
Okay, so my name is Raya, and we'll do formal introductions here in a moment, so I'll just carry on with this. But yes, we had a really good conversation in the start of this all, and I'm really grateful for Dee's just, being understanding and willing to hear me out when we had discussed, the advertisement and different things like that. And then we did touch on land acknowledgements, and I know it's a very controversial topic. There are different opinions about this from either Native community, and I see it as an opportunity to also acknowledge, our background, our ancestors, and yeah, some people do feel a little different about it. But if you listen to the words of this, what I've put together, it might give you a little bit more context and background as to what that might look like from the different perspectives. One of the things is land acknowledgements could be very performative, which is something that, if you don't have intentional action behind, is there any motive? What's the true honest motive? And so, yeah. As we touch on the subject of performative, what does a land acknowledgement really mean to you? When you research what is a land acknowledgement, you will find the definition: a land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes Indigenous peoples as the original stewards of the land and their ongoing relationship with it. Many land acknowledgements presented without an intentional action can be portrayed as performative. I believe that a land acknowledgement is determined by who is presenting it. As Indigenous Native American people, we acknowledge our ancestors that continue to take care of these lands of Mother Earth. The lands that were stolen by colonization, we acknowledge the genocide, the displacement of our nations, removal of our children, and the generational trauma that is embedded in our blood. However, today, we celebrate our existence. We acknowledge the strength and resilience of our people, paving a way through the concrete jungle for our future generations. When we talk about land, land is a part of who we are. It's a mixture of our blood, our past, our current, and our future. We carry our ancestors in us, and they are around us, as you all do. So with that, I am proud to honor and acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories and ancestral homelands of the Cheyenne and Arapaho nations who survived the Sand Creek attack in 1864. Now, there is a key word that I did not use there, and that is massacre. Because if it was a massacre, many of our people wouldn't be here today. The Ute, the Southern Ute, Mountain Ute, the Lakota, the Kiowa, the Comanche, Apache, Shoshone, and others of the 48 tribes that have called this land home. Now, you may recognize some of those names of some of the streets that you may, drive down in the Denver metro area. Now, maybe the next time that you do make your way down those streets, you don't see it as a street name, but a community of people. From a non-native land acknowledgement perspective, it is important to understand your long-standing history that has brought you to reside on the land, and to seek to understand your place within that history. Land acknowledgements do not exist in a past tense or historical context. Colonism is a current ongoing process, and we need to build our mindfulness of our present participation. What is the intention of your land acknowledgement? What steps will you take to support Indigenous people? Will you create alliances and allow them a seat at the table? I would love to thank Advocates for Recovery Colorado for taking on that initiative, sharing a space for Indigenous voices to be heard. In the month of September, we honored our elders who survived the boarding school system, and we remember every child matters. In October, we remind the general public our culture is not your costume. And in November, we celebrate Native American Heritage Month. However, we are not only Indigenous during these times. It is a way of life. It is how we live every day. We live in our children's past. And I'll say that again. We live in our children's past, meaning when we are long and gone, they will carry on our legacy, our teachings, and what we leave behind for them. This land is not ours to keep, but to simply borrow from future generations to come. So I hope some of those words really reside with you and help you get a little bit more context of the perspective of what land acknowledgements are. Yes, it may be looked at as racist, or a lot of times a lot of Native communities sees it as like token Native or not really having true intention. But for me personally, and I'm very mindful of how I represent my community, it's about just acknowledging, everything that up to this point that our community has been a part of, the history, the unspoken hardships that, we have to talk about those hard things in order for us to come together and to build a more promising future for all generations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raya. I really appreciate it. And so now I would like to hand it over to Joelle and hear a little bit about what this space means, and then we'll get into some more introductions.
Hello everyone, my name is Joelle and I'm happy to be part of your event today. Thank you for your words. It's nice to know more about the Native community, especially that we are in a neighborhood, the Westwood, that is all about Native, and our clients are maybe, if I can say, 1/4 of them is from the Native community, which we are proud of, and we have 2 or 3 VAs that are Native from the Native communities. So I'm so happy to know more, and it's always great to know more about all the cultures. You see our space here. This is where we live every day, Monday to Friday, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. with all the seniors and all the young people that have the EBD waiver. EBD is elderly, blind, or disabled. So any person who is over 62, blind, or has any disability can join the program under the EBD waiver, and the state and the Medicaid will pay for them. And the veterans, it's another department where the veterans would pay for the same program too. So this program of Adult Day Center is now, if we can say, a trend or something good for everyone, not to stay at home, especially with dementia, because we are a specialized day program for dementia. So when we get the license, it's either a standard license or a specialized license. And I'm so happy we got the specialized because we have lots of dementia persons. So our program is easy. We open doors at 9 a.m., breakfast till 10:30. Then we have a physical activity. It's important to have physical activities every day that is personalized to every client has a care plan. So we do either chair yoga, light stretching, walk and talk. After that, we have a free time with coffee and tea and all kind of snacks that are well prepared by our chef. Low sugar, low salt for the best health. After that, we have our lunch around 12 to 12:30 every day. Professional chef, 25 years. All kind of cuisines. So I always encourage you, invite you to come have lunch with us, especially if you are up there. So, and then after lunch, we have another kind of activity that involves mental or emotional. So in the morning we do the physical activity, but in the afternoon we focus on the mental stimulation, especially for the dementia and everyone, and the emotional interactions and activities. Tuesday and Thursday mainly we do our outings, movie theaters, museum, bowling, anything that has cultural or themes. And we love to do events about themes. Like we did our Halloween fashion show. We have many activities coming in November. I have a calendar that I am required to have by the state, a calendar for the month. What else? So if I need to summarize it, it's a beautiful day with social interactions, music, activities, singing. Our team is really a caring team with a golden heart. The chef, the office manager, the floor manager, the 2 drivers and the 2 caregivers. I really encourage, if you have any person who is in need of this plan, to come. I left some flyers and some business cards, where you have your stand. I'm so happy to be part of this, and I know that you work in the same trend as we work too. Thank you. I would like to introduce our office manager. His name is Joe. He's gonna talk a little bit about home care. What I talked about is the day program, but we have another program that we just got the license 3 months ago. It's about home care. That means when a person is the same client who comes here, but he needs someone to take care of him at home, his beloved one or his relative or anyone he chooses, he gets paid for his service. So Joe, if you...
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, welcome everyone. So my name is Joe. I'm the director of the home care. So basically we're a non-medical home care agency. We focus on 3 things to give the seniors the support they deserve, the independence they so rightfully crave, and all the services that they need, right? So my job is more technical than all the rest, right? So I focus on the paperwork, on getting them the help they need with the state. And that's pretty much it, like for the home care. Now, as far as the services go, the services, they're provided through the caregivers, whether they are live-in caregivers or non-live-in caregivers. Now, if most of our clients are basically alone, right? So they do lead a lonely lifestyle. So we provide the caregivers for them, right? Like for Kimberly, for example, or we focus on giving them all the time that they need, right? And the support, as I said, with other people. So we focus on social interactions, whether here or at home. At home with our employees, sometimes we drive to go and take care of them, just run a wellness check on the clients, make sure they're okay, not in the hospital, or they don't need to be in the hospitals, right? And as far as the state is concerned, so my job is to make sure that we're compliant with the state, especially in the documents, right, in the folders. So that entails a lot of work, needless to say. And our clients have only good things to say about us. Right? I hope.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
And thank you guys so much for giving us a little introduction about what you guys do here. And also thank you so much for hosting Advocates for Recovery as well, because Dara, who I'm going to have do a very short introduction and speak a little bit about what she's doing with the cultural program. So for those of you who don't know, Dara was recently promoted into the cultural program coordinator position, which as the peer networking coordinator, I get to work very, very closely with Dara. And so we're really trying to collaborate more on developing spaces, not only for peers, but also for our cultural program as well. So do you want to come and say a little bit about what you've been doing?
Sure. Is this thing turned on? Okay. So my name is Dara Mendoza, and I am the cultural program coordinator and bilingual certified peer and family specialist. So basically, for me, what that means is that I get to expand the services that Advocates for Recovery provides to the Hispanic and Latino communities. I have a huge experience being, well, I guess what I would call like stigmatized and kind of pushed to the side because I didn't know the language, right? And my parents weren't informed when I was in my active use about like the resources and the programs available, right? And so kind of like expanding that and letting the Latino and Hispanic communities know, and not just the Hispanic communities, like other communities know that there's tons of resources, there's tons of help out there available, it doesn't cost anything, and really just bringing that to the communities that need that, you know, because there's a lot of us that, you know, especially the Spanish speakers, we don't know the language, we don't know what's out there, and so we kind of rely on the Spanish speaking services, and there's not a lot, and so that's kind of what I'm doing with the cultural program.
Thank you, Dara. And I just want to reiterate how incredible it is. Like, I've sat in the same office as Dara as she has gone through step by step and translated a lot of what has been available on our website so that people who only speak Spanish know about our services. And part of this program will transpire into an open house for this space, and then later on this evening there will be a meeting that Dara hosts that's a Spanish speaking only, but also now kind of like a bilingual meeting, is that right?
Yes, so it started off as a Spanish meeting, and I've had people show up that don't speak Spanish or don't understand Spanish, so now it's turned into a bilingual meeting. So it's like everybody's welcome, anybody will make it work.
Right. I think that's great, and I think it's so cool to be able, like, because of my position at Advocates for Recovery, not only do I get to host these events, but I also get to meet people like everybody on our panel who I'm going to introduce here very shortly. And I also get to work beside Dara and watch just like the really incredible things that she's doing and building this cultural program. So with that being said, I'm gonna stand up because I'm gonna be running back and forth with the microphone here. But so we have with us a panel of folks from different organizations. So Tyler, I'm going to come down and start with you. Tyler works with the Denver Indian Center, and would you like to tell everybody a little bit about what your position is and what you do?
Hello everyone, thank you so much for having me today. This is first time in peer support, so I'm very excited. But I'm a program support specialist with the youth over at the Denver Indian Center. So I help with, we do homework help, tutoring. We put on culture nights where we can introduce our kids to stuff that they may not otherwise be exposed to. Being in Denver as a native, it's a little bit of duality. We call it urban Indian. So you might not be exposed to stuff that you otherwise would be. So we try and expose that through the culture night. And then my biggest thing is just being an advocate for the youth, whether it be advocating for them to their teachers, seeing that they're trying to get their grades up, if they're doing things outside of their programs. We have some models, some people who have partaked in icon fashion shows. We have artists who are working on murals right now, but really just trying to advocate for them and push them in a positive direction. That's really what I'm about over at the Denver Indian Center.
Awesome. And then Christina, do you want to go ahead?
Hi, my name is Christina. I am a peer navigator / which I didn't really mention, / behavioral health intern at Denver Indian Health and Family Services. So from the peer navigator side, and Ryan will touch on this a bit more, but resource support, helping people with any kind of stressors that would impact their health care at our clinic. So whether that's like transportation, housing, employment, things like that, kind of social support. And then on the behavioral health intern side, I've been an intern therapist all of 2025 and also helping with our integrated care visits. So that's more like crisis or short-term intervention when people come in and have maybe like a high depression score screening, thoughts of harming themselves, things like that. We kind of go in and assess for safety and see how we can connect them to services. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So yes, apologize now, it's kind of a long one, but za ha sikatabe dos hitsi tausini ananena na a biha hinona inino. Hello, my name is Growing Plume. My English name is Raya Joy. I'm a member of the Northern Arapaho, Eastern Shoshone, and Flathead Nations from the Wind River Indian Reservation in Pewaukee, Wyoming. I work at Denver Indian Health and Family Services in the Behavioral Health Department as a peer navigator. I am a student as well. I attend Central Wyoming College, and I am receiving my bachelor's in tribal leadership and government. I am also a business owner, so that's one of the main things that we really encourage is, that entrepreneurship within our Indigenous communities and just uplifting, our youth and our community in that way. I co-founded Direct. I'm also the logistics coordinator, speaker, dancer, everything in between, many hats, for Indigenous Corporation 5280. It's a cultural awareness organization that brings Indigenous representation into every community through dance exhibition, origin storytelling, and cultural awareness education. We even hold educational speaking panels, workshops. We've collaborated with all sorts of different organizations within our communities. We uplift Indigenous businesses and organizations. We bring awareness to a lot of our social and climate injustices. We have been doing this work since 2015, so we're about at our 10-year mark now, which is pretty crazy because I was a teenager back then. So just to see where it's flourished and where we are today is, everything, especially with the nonprofit work, it's really like, it takes a lot. We're still trying to figure out what direction we want to go in. But really what our hopes is to be able to provide tiny homes for our homeless relatives in inner cities and on reservations, because a lot of time we think of Indigenous people, you think of historical context, or you think of rural areas, but we talked earlier that we are a melting pot within a melting pot. Denver is one of the most populated of Indigenous people, as we're connected to a lot of the northern plain, or central plains natives that are here in Denver. And so that's really what our goal is to do. We have had partnerships all over the Denver metro area and different city and organizations that has helped us in that mission. And so my passion in life specifically is to be a part of spaces systematically that weren't built for our community, Indigenous peoples, all peoples, and learn how they work and translate that back to the people so we can encourage their voices and their abilities to be able to advocate for themselves. As we talk about the history of assimilation and oppression, it's important for us to be able to be that representation in these spaces so that way we can encourage them to take that on. So being in healthcare, I never seen myself in this, but it was more of a call to action. It was something that I see directly impacts my community. Focusing on tribal leadership and government. I run away from politics. I don't want anything to do with it. But it was, I've seen working at Denver Indian Health and Family Services, how the decision making is directly impacting our community. When we had government shutdown, when EBT benefits came to a hold, we had came together in that supplement of how can we help our community and help our people get through this. Indigenous peoples have always found a way through healing and love and laughter, and that's really what our culture is really about. But I'm gonna just stop there and pass it on.
Good evening, everyone. Chante Washten Nichizabem, Carla Takuni Ohalashni Hemye. My name is Carla, respects nothing. I am Oglala, from the Oglala Sioux tribe. I just greeted you from the doorway in, doorway out. In my language, it's called the Lakota language. I am born and raised. I was born and raised till I was of age on my native reservation in South Dakota. And so coming up here, again, they say we walk into worlds. So, it was assimilating to my environment, which is really hard, but I had a daughter, so I had no choice. But I actually got my certification through Advocates for Recovery. I did the supervisor training, was my last one. And I like to talk about recovery because, where I'm sitting here with lived experience as well. And so with that being said, I sobered up about almost 11 years ago. And that piece of it through Creator and my spirituality was that everyone seen me sober up. So my peers and relatives seen me sober up. So I had no choice. It wasn't a choice, but it was the passion in me to see others sober up. So I ended up being that role model for everyone around me, being Native and non-Native. But we also have, besides our government programs here, which is very few, we do have our nonprofit and other organizations that host us. We have talking circles. We also have talking circles in different unhoused housing organizations. So through that, I was able to help others in sobriety. And so, you know, just that piece of it. And then I found my sobriety through White Bison Sobriety. And so that was a big part of my life. And so with that, I kind of supported them as well. In Colorado Springs, I called down Koyas, my Lekshi, my uncle, because he was really a big part of my journey in sobriety. So with that, I also, you know, incorporated that to these different organizations to get, you know, them to let them know that it's okay to use our culture a little bit as far as healing others. So that was a big part of my journey, beginning my sobriety. And then, sorry, I forgot to introduce my organizations.
Okay.
So I'm on the board of directors of Native American Housing Circle. We're a new nonprofit, about 2 years of new nonprofit. But I also served on the advisory board for the state of Colorado's Missing and Murdered Indigenous Department of Justice organization. I was on her advisory board, and I also am a former Denver City and County Human Rights Commissioner, American Indian Commissioner. So I just left that seat this year, and also my other seat. But coming here in my sobriety, I found my leadership. I found my leadership, like we were talking earlier, that, you know, we have to be the voice. Sometimes we have to be the voice of our Native people in our, you know, I really don't use the word indigenous, but I'll use it tonight, to help them speak for themselves, to give them the strength in following our walk, you know, like we all do in sobriety and in general life. But having that voice at the table where they don't have our voice. So some people say they're using our data, they're using our Native rights, but you know, now I even serve on Lakewood, Jefferson County City and County government. I'm on their advisory board now as well. I've been there 2 years, but I also work in our unhoused field. That's what our organization, Native American Housing Circle, supports in our unhoused. We did have a part of remember the camps, that we had our own Native inclusive camp out on Peoria on I-70. So I was a big part of that. And so anyway, that's what I do, and I have many hats. Thank you.
Thank you. That's awesome. And what, like, an incredible group of people to have with us. And thank you so much, Carla, for mentioning the recovery component of it as well, because I do want to mention that some of our panelists are also coming from a mental health component as well as an affected family member component. So we have all different avenues of recovery journeys, essentially. Because there are just as many pathways to recovery as there are people in recovery, and so it doesn't necessarily have to be from a problematic relationship with mind-altering substances, but it can be affected family, it can be mental health. And just to give you guys a brief recap, my name is Dee, and I am the Peer Networking and Training Coordinator for Advocates for Recovery Colorado, and I am also a certified peer and family specialist. I have gotten the honor of meeting all of these folks through either training or previous branches. Tyler, I got to meet through an email because of Raya, so it's been a really cool community component. And so with respect of time, but also like really touching on some pretty important questions. So I had come up with a bunch of questions for this panel because, again, I wanted it to be a very open and sort of raw approach. And so some of the questions I had highlighted, but then I handed this list over to these guys earlier and they were like, nope, we're gonna talk about that one and this one and that one. So we're just gonna go with it. But to start, and I encourage all of you to speak on this, or I encourage one of you to speak up, whomever wants to go first. But the first one I would like to ask is, in a country where the dominant culture differs from your own, how have you explored or reconnected with your cultural roots, and in what ways does that influence the peer support services you provide? Anybody? Yeah, go for it, Tyler.
So I think community is my answer for this one. Getting into a community that does differ from the mainstream, in this case being my native community, you just get to connect to people, hear the stories, and the rest all just kind of falls into place. I think once you start making connections, I call it boots on the ground, hearing the live stories, hearing the live connections, something positive always comes from it. And I think whether it be relating to someone's story, seeing someone's struggle to humble you, whatever it may be, I think just getting boots on the ground, hearing the stories in your community is something that can very much so uplift you and separate you from the mainstream culture of our country.
Yeah, anybody else want to answer that one?
When you said the question had roots in it, right? And then I was thinking boots in the roots. Cheesy, but yeah. So I always say that culture it brings out a lot of our morals and values. And I think that's how we all connect in different ways. And a lot of times if you're brought up in a similar way, you kind of understand each other. And I think that's really a key component is we always talk about going home, or even just reminding yourself of your indigenous knowledge and your cultural connections. And so it's always important because it brings a lot of, it reminds you you're human and it humbles you. And I think that, like the Lakota people talk about the 7 virtues, and, we talk about like the medicine wheel and how it has those, the 4 stages of life. And remembering, we say, I think it's like culture is recovery is something that we've said before. And medicine, culture is medicine. And so I think that is one of the main things when it comes to connecting and connecting with, our patients that might even be in the recovery journey, is reminding them of that and reminding them that it's, in this, we call it the concrete jungle, right? And here in the city life, is that, just reminding yourself that you do your existence, right? And just remembering that what all those teachings that have brought you up to this point will help you in that healing process as well. So.
Did you want to answer that?
For me, it's basically, I've always had it instilled in me because, I consider myself an urban Indian or native, but I really, growing up as being the older person on this panel, and probably in the room, I already had them roots from my reservation and my family life on the reservation. So, it's always there. And I'm just sharing it now as an elder.
I love it. That's exactly, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. So then my next question would be for everyone. So peer work often intersects with stigma and misunderstanding. So how have you seen discrimination or bias impact Native, Latinx, or Black individuals seeking recovery? Everybody got really excited about that one.
Let's go down the line.
We've all felt it. So for me, the first part of it is our names, right? We're still carrying our ancestors' family name. And for me, I've been married twice. And, we agreed. I walk with a powerful name. So for me, it's really hard because it shows me that how invisible we can be. because with this name, it's hard to get a job. It's hard to be really acknowledged because people don't think, because you know, my last name is respects nothing. And so in my culture, it's my great grandfather's native name. But when they put us on the reservations, they captured us and put us on the reservations through the ledgers. They kept his Indian name, and then they added white names to the family members. So that's how we got last names. So my great grandfather, his name was actually Fears Nothing. But when they captured us, they translated it to Respects Nothing. So that's kind of what, along lines of how some of us got our names, and you know, we just kept our names down through the years. But for us, you know, it's that invisibility that we get sometimes, that they don't believe who we are, or, you know, there's times when I would go to a job fair, right? And I applied for jobs numerous times. And these people would look at me like, oh, you're an actual real person? Or in job interviews, they're, well, we didn't really think that, you know, sometimes they don't want to admit it, but that, you know, there's natives still here, that kind of stuff. So we really feel that oppression still to this day. And, you know, for me personally, it's still there. But I think, you know, just doing the work and helping the people for me is really what keeps me going.
I think one of the I guess you would say elephant in the room stigma that really is like oppressed onto Indigenous people is being, you know, an alcoholic, or having, you know, the drunk Indian term. And I think that it really takes away from the identity of who we really are as people, and the beauty of what our backgrounds are really about. I think we get dismissed in a lot of ways in that way. And I've really seen, you know, even on the streets, like I call a relative who's unhoused, and somebody may just see him as like a homeless man, but to me, like, I see genuinely like my uncle, you know, who has been through, has that generational trauma as well as that direct trauma. And I think that a lot of times, you know, the rest of the world might just see it as like that stigma alone, and doesn't take in consideration of all the trials and tribulations, or all the oppression that they have been placed into, or even at times, like I even felt in my own, you know, I always say you don't have to be. I wrote this poem about my mom. She is celebrating 2 years of sobriety out of the 27 years of my life. So yeah, so I'm really, it's been an interesting journey for her and I. You know, we've had to trade places at times, and I'm just, you know, like, it's to see it directly impacted. I see it through myself. I struggled in a lot of different ways. And, you know, when you hold yourself in these spaces that you're representing your community, you know, there's that other double life, you know, and I had to learn how to navigate through that myself. And I, you know, at times still find myself learning how to do so. And so one of the things is just, you know, like, just remembering, like, that's not all we are. You know, we're not just this stigma of drunk natives, or, you know, oppression. Like, they have this, I think it's Bury My Heart on Wounded Knee, which is a movie, if you ever get a chance to watch it. And there's a part or a connection to the history where they would give us the fish oil in a brown bottle. So basically, like, anytime that we were ill, that was what was given, you know. And so it's just a coping mechanism, really, for just like some things that we don't really understand ourselves. And I truly honestly believe that generational trauma is a real thing, because there's times where I've been in spaces where I could feel the blood pumping through my veins of just pure, like, hurt with the words that are being used, with the assumptions that are being made, and the dismissing that is happening. So I really think that's really one of the biggest things for me is seeing our people as more of who they are and what they've been through as just their coping mechanism.
Can you repeat the name of the movie, please?
Oh, yes. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee.
Carla just said she watched it last night.
Oh, did you?
was
That's
bored.
crazy how that. It's so crazy how that is. Things always come up like that.
That was very good insight. When I think of like stigma in relation to recovery or accessing help, systems, all of those things, it's kind of like, you know, if someone is going through recovery or is presenting for a service and they look one way, namely white, they are met with more compassion, more understanding, more like asking questions, to where, at least in my experiences, I have seen when people of color are presenting with the same outer, it's often like, well, what's wrong with you? What did you do to get there, right? Like, why are you here versus what happened to you, or the kind of like underneath part. And so it's kind of crazy when you think about that, right? Because as Raya said, you know, when you think about communities of color and kind of like the root of some of the big stigmas or stereotypes that are out there, it's like substances were put into their communities and they were encouraged to use them and then later on abuse them, right? And so it's like, okay, we know that, but then you got, okay. So I really just think about, you know, how I think, as both these ladies alluded to, we are not seen as a person. We're not seen as what happened to you, the generational trauma that you were born with because of your bloodline, right? And so I think when we talk about dismantling stigmas, we have to talk about all the other parts that go along with it, right? Not just me not having a stereotype about you, but understanding kind of where that person may come from just because, you know, of their cultural background. You don't have to know their whole life, but having an understanding of like, okay, because this person is of color, they have experienced things that other groups haven't, because, you know, we live in America and America has unfortunately not been kind to people of color. So I hope that makes sense, but yeah.
So I think we've identified a good amount of the bias and the stigma, so I kind of want to touch on the individual impact of those. And I always grew up hearing, don't be a statistic. And what that means is, you know, don't become an alcoholic, don't become one of the numbers. And I think it's inevitable that, you know, growing up, no matter what your walk of life is, you're going to experiment with something. And if you do have some kind of trauma behind it, you might get latched to something. How you identify, I think, affects how you move forward. And I think if you constantly hear, don't be a statistic, don't be a number, don't fall into the cycle, or don't be like your dad, don't be like your grandfather. If you do fall into that cycle, I think it can almost be an immediate defeat. You just accept it to where you, well, okay, I'm now a number. I'm now like my dad, I'm now like my grandfather, to where I just think it's a little bit harder to dig yourself out of those holes. So those stigmas, it's what do they call it? Classical conditioning. It's almost like if you tell someone what they are, they can become it. So in the fear of avoiding it, you very well could become it. So I think those biases can definitely impact the individual a lot.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, I also wanted to share just one more thing. I worked at an in-house navigation organization, and as a peer, as a counselor, and when I was seeing this lady who was coming in to do the RAP plan, right? So she was coming in on a regular basis, and then she said, well, how can I get a hold of you when I'm between appointments? So I gave her my card, and she said, well, weren't you guys big old drunks? And I said, well, no, yes and no. It depends on how you feel about it, but we can talk about it. And no, you know, we can all sober up.
Yeah, and I thank you for that, and thank you for adding that piece too, because I think a lot of what we're talking about right now really resonates with, like, not only do you all face stigmatization of being people of color and people of tribal descent, but also another layer and another component is that stigmatization of being a drunk or an addict or mentally ill, right? And so I know for me, like, my father used to joke about having a little bit of blood in our alcohol stream. And so, like, until I grew up and really understood what that meant, I was like, oh, haha, that's so funny. And it's not, because it was like, then it became kind of like you were saying, like a culture, like a classical conditioning of like, I was the only white girl who could drink anybody under the table, right? And so it really does not only contribute to the stigma and the discrimination that we experience as addicts and alcoholics, but then when you're carrying that extra component on top of it as well, like there's that whole other layer that you have to like really spell out for people, right? Like you have to really break it down piece by piece of, yes, I am of this descent and I am a recovering or a person in recovery or a person on a mental wellness journey, right? Which is like such a huge barrier in so many different places. And Carla, I just wanted to bring up what you were saying earlier about jobs. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I thought like there's no way that this person's last name is actually respects nothing. I was like, there's no way that's real when Carla signed up for training. And to hear the story of how that got manipulated and changed is so powerful, because it's something I don't think anybody takes into consideration when they're speaking with other people in the room of like, how did you get your last name? Where did that come from? And the fact that it was completely essentially dismantled into something that wasn't even of actual roots, right? And so like I had to highlight that part, because that's essentially what this whole conversation is about. So thank you guys, I really appreciate it. And I know a lot of these questions are really heavy, but that's kind of the point in this, is because like these are the realities that a lot of people don't understand, a lot of people don't take into consideration when they're having an everyday conversation about mental health or being an affected family member. And so with the affected family member component, I did want to highlight a question that Tyler had brought up, but I also really am wondering if you can kind of tie in the youth component to this question as well, because the question is, many communities experience both cultural pride and cultural pain. So how do you navigate that duality while helping others? And how does that show up for you with youth?
It's a great question.
So with my experience at the Denver Indian Center, we have a lot of our youth that feel disconnected from their culture, from our community. They're very much so trying to reconnect, find a part of themselves, spiritual, physical, mental journey, figure out who they are. And I think getting further along their journey, they start to uncover some of the trauma of previous generations. We have a lot of generational trauma from boarding schools, which is a very, very, very negative thing. It's severed a lot of wisdom, information that should be passed down to these youth. And I think that, I'm sorry, drawing a blank here. Can you ask the question?
Yeah, totally. So it's many communities experience both cultural pride and cultural pain. So how do you navigate the duality while helping?
Yes. I think that acknowledging is healing. I think being able to talk about it is alleviating some of that pain. And once you can take something as your own, it turns into pride. So that pain, once you own it, once you transform it, once you accept it in your ways, it now turns into something prideful. And I think that's something that we really try to convey to our youth. And something that we've done recently was a youth and elders brunch, where the two generations got to connect and share their stories. And it was painful and healing at the same time, which I think brought a lot of pride for both parties.
That's awesome. Is there any part of that question that speaks to you personally? I know I threw in the youth component, but that was a question of like, that stuck out to you. So what part of that cultural...
I just think that you can't have one without the other. I think the pain ties into the resilience of natives, which is something to be prideful for.
That's awesome.
No, I was
Oh, okay, you're gonna pass it. Okay, that's why I was just passing it too. But I just had to say real quick, I'm an auntie in training, so I always hype everybody up. So this guy we were actually talking about earlier, and I wanted him to bring this up, but I'll bring it up for him. But what we talked about was his connection with peer support in a way with the youth is he's helping guide them in a way at the early stage, so that way they don't fall into different influences and things like that. So. I just want to say that.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, did anybody else want to answer that question?
For me, I guess it's working with the individual in recovery. So eventually you have to break down them walls or like peeling an onion of, so are you ready to talk about your children or your family? And what type of role model, eventually in the Native community that, it's always the grandma or the mom or, the other family members taking care of their children, and them forgetting that loss of love in their community and their family circle. So, it as working with the individual with children or even of young adults, and I'll say lived experience, is that, we really have to, like he said that, give them all their pride back. Because through that boarding school era, like even my own parents and my aunt, aunts and uncles, because of that boarding school trauma and them having to hide their culture, they never shared my language with us. They only strictly spoke English. And so they didn't teach us none of that. And so I didn't feel, my father passed away and I couldn't, I was upset with him because he didn't share that with me. But now I'm sharing it with my kids and my grandkids. So, that it's just that re-acknowledgement of who we are.
And I want to elaborate a little bit, and then I'm going to ask my last call to action question. But for those in the room who are unaware of why, I think it's September when you guys wear orange on one of the days to recognize all of the children who were lost and conditioned in boarding schools. Would anybody like to elaborate on why that's such a huge component as to what's being resurrected in culture today?
I could go ahead.
So I'll just touch on the story as why it's an orange shirt. There was a boarding school survivor, and I apologize, I don't know her name right now. I'm pretty sure it's a woman. But she had an orange shirt, and when they had removed her from her home, they took that shirt from her, and she just always stuck with her. And so we wear that orange shirt and resemble to honor, and remember that every child matters. And I had something that I wanted to say before on that last one. So with it was the boarding school era was they assimilated us and they took away that culture and that love that we genuinely had for the generation we're bringing up, and that it built a lot of resentment, and a lot of resentment towards being indigenous, being Native American or Native or Indigenous, or being proud of their cultural identities, that they did hold back from passing that along. And then we came into that next generation where there was a lot of exposure to a lot of substance uses, and just getting out and trying different things, and then but also living with that generational trauma. And that's kind of where my mom's generation is. So we had my grandma, and then we had my mom, and then where my grandma didn't really know how to truly love her daughter in a way that was going to continue on. And a lot of it was because of having to oppress the way that we all were brought up culturally and expressing that. And then my mom lived with a lot of those, a lot of that with her, so then she coped with it. And then with that, it came into this generation now, into where I am. And so, I think it's just kind of that domino effect. It just kind of, went from one generation to the next. And then as far as, and I'm sorry, the question one more time with the boarding school?
Just what that means and why it's so important to bring that up now so that there can be generational healing.
Well, I'll just say like a little piece of it. There is a term called kill the Indian, save the man. And so really what it was to, you know, keep us useful, but also take away, you know, the pride of our identity and who we are, so that way they could use us. And this basically in a way what's going on right now, even with the school systems, you know, it's like they expect you, once you turn 18, you're gonna get right into the workforce and you're gonna be useful. And I think that really that's what it was about, was just stripping the culture, the language, the traditions, the, you know, singing, dancing, and all that, so that way they could still utilize us in a way that was beneficial to them. They wanted to take our land from us. They wanted to take, you know, our water rights, our land rights. You know, they basically took many of our buffalo, and they stripped them of their hides and just left them there, when one community could take a whole buffalo and utilize every single piece of that. And even, you know, for like, I don't know, for a good time. So I think really what it is just like that power and control, which I think is still the still what is happening today. It's so crazy because you think of 100 years ago as forever ago, but no, like there's so many things that are still happening today that are so relevant, and so still we have not made. And I always say right now, like what has taken generations of movements to make changes is taking weeks to demolish, and it's disgusting to say the least. But I'll let somebody else touch on that.
I guess it really kind of stemmed from the Canada era, you know, as well. But basically, it was both the same United States. They were just taking the children away from the families to incorporate them into Christianity and education. And so they created these random boarding schools to take the children away and you know, to create Americans, you know, whatever it was, take that native culture and tribal affiliation from them to educate them as well. And during that process, you know, there was children that passed away in them schools and family members, and the children were trying to escape back to their families. And so a lot of the children passed away during that time, and they created ceremonies. So what that brought up was that, as well as taking that, stripping the culture and language and everything that they were, so now to this point, they're trying to get them kids back. And, you know, you've seen the Pope in Canada, you know, apologize for what had happened. And I'm not sure, did he come to America and do that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, okay, he did that too then. And so that's kind of what and so it's just to honor that piece as well, and the children that were the survivors of this era of stripping away our culture and you know, creating what they wanted to, and then take the land on top of it.
Thank you so much for that. And I did just want to be mindful, because we are going to have our open house here in a second. But the last question that I would like to ask you all before we open up the doors for our open house is, what barriers, and this is for everybody to answer, but what barriers still exist within our systems and communities that keep people from accessing culturally affirming recovery resources, and how would you change that?
I guess for me, it's just basic communication and sharing, networking, collaborating.
I agree. I think, yeah, definitely the communication, the awareness. I think awareness is huge. I think that it, you know, is something as simple as just, you know, giving us the option. You know, I always say is like, how are we gonna know if we don't have the option? And then definitely just, no gatekeeping, really. I always say there's a lot of division in a lot of communities. And I think it's important for us that we need to recognize we are not the enemy here. You know, if anything, like we have so many similarities and have so much in common, that you'd be surprised what we could get done, you know? And I think just being a neighbor and checking in on your people and letting them know that their voice matters too, you know, and that if, like, I see you, I think would be really important. And I think, yeah, just even like I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that sometimes people are in it for their own glory or for their own, legacy, I guess you could say. But if that's really what your intentions are, and that's what the whole thing with the land acknowledgement is like. What's your intentions? It's like you're not really here for the people. You're not really here to do the work. You being okay with doing the work behind the scenes without anybody even knowing. So I think that's what I would do. Is I would just encourage people to be okay with being behind the camera and getting things done.
As far as the barriers, I think like we've been saying, like individuals and communities have generational trauma, and so do systems. And so things that were done, like Raya said, not really that long ago, we're still feeling the impacts. And so that would be the barriers. But I think like empowerment is so huge, and we see like the evidence of when individuals are empowered, when their communities and their families and the work that they're doing is empowered. So I think when we continue to move in that way, we can really see change. So
I think in terms of the system, I think the largest barrier is information, just knowing that it's out there, that the help is out there. But on more of an individual level, I think that a huge barrier can be the commitment, because once you commit to your culture, your community, it's real. I think the solution to that is the community getting behind them, whatever your community may be. I really like the word empower. Like empowerment from the community, from your family, helps break down that barrier. And let people know, even if they trip and stumble along the way, that they're behind them.
What a powerful way to end it. So thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciate it. I really wish we had more time, but I would love to invite you to stay for the open house, speak a little bit about what you do, network with folks, because it is so critical to know that you guys are in the community and doing what you're doing. And I just really appreciate everybody being here today. So thank you.
I have to go, but I have Denver Indian Health and Family Services and the DigiCorps information over there.
Yeah, sorry, Raya. I didn't even realize I kept you. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. So yeah, we have the board. If everybody would like to sign the peer support board, and then there are resources and flyers and business cards. And then if you scan the QR code and you happen to take any pictures, there is a shared Google photo album for peer support professionals only. So thanks, guys.
Can we take a picture over there
Yeah.
at the table?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I did want to say that I videotaped it, and I do have like a peer support professional